Thank you so much for opening up this recording. I know that's a very vulnerable action to do because you're about to hear about ways to rethink about ABA. This specific audio is about a person or a family member who has experienced ABA before and has not enjoyed it. I'm so sorry that's happened, but it's not something I haven't heard before. The field of ABA is one that I feel is always trying to reclaim itself and have people understand what we do, why we do it, how we do it. I can go on and branch off of this topic, but I really want to focus on not convincing, but asking you to be open-minded to it again. And just to preface, ABA is not for everyone. It's not a fix-all, right? It's just one approach. Now, the approaches are going to be a little bit different based upon the type of therapist that you have, the type of company you're contracted with, where the behaviors are being addressed. I mean, there's so many variables. So once again, I'm going to try to bring it in, but I'll definitely make sure to do some more audio and video trainings about this topic. So there are 3 things that I want you to do to be open-minded if you have had a bad ABA experience and you're looking into trying it again. Okay, here are the 3 things, and then I'll expand on them. 1, I want you to ask questions using 5 WH questions, okay? I want you to ask the who, what, where, when, and why about ABA services for your child, and then throw a how in there too, a how question. So I'll expand on these in a moment. Number 2, I want you to interview the company, okay? The company itself, I want you to interview, and the therapists that are working with your child. This will obviously be before you contract with them, but also as time goes on and you stick with one company and or one behavior analyst, there might be multiple RBTs that cycle through. I want you to remember, to interview those RBTs. Okay, number 3, I want you to frequently attend and ask for check-ins while your child is receiving ABA services. Okay, I'm going to go into details in just a moment about what to do in those meetings, how often to have them, the purpose of them, and what you should be thinking about while you're in these meetings. Okay, I hope you have a pen and paper. If not, you're listening to this while you're driving. It's a recording. You could always go back. Okay, so let's go back to number 1. First, you know what? I probably put these out of order. Let's go to number 2 first, interviewing the company and person, including RBT. It's okay. They're the top 3, but let's just pretend that you're looking into ABA services and you are going to start researching companies. Okay, first, you're probably going to Google search or another platform, ABA companies in my area. Hopefully, there's a lot that pop up. Now, that's a good thing, right? There's a lot of different companies out there. Just to give you a little knowledge, there are corporate companies, some that are very large, nationwide, statewide. There are many more companies that are small and micro. Pros and cons to both. You'll still want to do your interviews. You'll still want to do your research. But just to give you some insight. Corporate companies, they usually have a lot of people. So there will be less of a wait list. But your therapists may not be as attentive. They might, but they probably have a large caseload themselves. These companies are large in nature. They are a business. Kudos to them. But their goal is to have as many clients as possible. Okay? Now, there are small micro companies, and what happens is that a behavior analyst is allowed to go off and open their own company. Now, they could hire another behavior analyst, or they could just keep it to themselves and hire registered behavior technicians or board certified assistant behavior analysts. Okay, so either an assistant who also can run a case, or an RBT who is the one directly implementing the interventions. Okay, it's a team approach. It's supposed to be a team, regardless if you're with a big, large corporate company or a small micro company. There should be at least 2 therapists who you are communicating with, as long as they have it staffed, that is helping you and your child with ABA therapy. Okay? So while you are interviewing and researching these companies, regardless of the size, I want you to ask the following questions. Okay? So first, for the company, I want you to ask if there are any minimum requirement number of hours that they require for your child. Okay? Minimum number. So just to expand on this a little bit. Some companies, depending on where they may implement services, let's say it's at a school or at a clinic, they may say you're required to come to our center a minimum of 30 hours a week. Okay? Now, that might be a red flag. It might not. Obviously, from the company's perspective, they are a business. They want to make their money. They are looking at how can we maintain our employees, right? And how can we ensure that a child is receiving enough services? Once again, ABA is individualized. So a child who is engaging in severe self-injurious behavior may quite need 30 hours of therapy per week. A child who just lacks some social skills, has some communication, but is just a little shy, do they need 30 hours a week? I want you as a caregiver, as a parent, to think about your child's life and think about truly where they are at and how a certain number of service and therapy hours can support them. Okay? I'll dive deeper into this in another training, but basically, we say that early intervention is best. So if your child is 4 years old and younger, it is highly recommended that they get a larger number of hours so that we can work on those behaviors very specifically. And then they're going to acquire these behaviors a lot quicker because they have a shorter history of learning, and they will be able to soak it in and generalize these behaviors most of the time to different people, different settings, which is exactly the goal, okay? But the idea is that as they reach their goals, the number of hours decreases, okay? So I don't want you to think that ABA therapy is always supposed to be a certain number of hours per week. 25 hours, 30 hours, 10 hours, 5 hours. It's individualized. It's based on so many factors. Okay, so this is a really good question, and I want you to ask, is there a minimum number of hours? If so, that could be a company that you completely take off of your list. If they say no, I'd say that's a green flag. Okay? Okay. So, more questions to ask. The company that you're interviewing, RBT. Ask what payments they accept. Okay, ABA therapy is very expensive. Obviously, different prices for different levels of services. But most of the time, ABA is covered by insurance. Now, depending on what state you live in, I am in Florida. We have quite a few scholarships. At the time of this recording in 2026, we have the Step Up for Students Scholarship Unique Abilities that does cover ABA services. Okay, Step Up Scholarship for Unique Abilities covers ABA services and more. But as far as funding goes, hey, if you've got the money to pay out of pocket and you want to, that's incredible. I love that for you so, so much. However, especially if a person is requiring a higher number of service hours, you're going to want to look into insurance coverage. So definitely ask, how are services paid for? Okay? One more question to ask the companies while you're interviewing, and then we'll move on to the therapists. As far as the companies go, I want you to ask them how they support the families, okay? Because obviously they are there to contract with the client. The client is typically viewed as the child for whom the services are being delivered, but also the caregivers themselves are supposed to be directly involved in the implementation of the therapy. Okay, so this is a question that might be a curveball to them, but considering your personal history with ABA services, I can imagine that it was something that you might have thought you did not have control over, and that you wish you could go back in time and fix differently. So this question that you are going to ask the companies about how they ensure caregivers are involved is going to be one that makes them think, and also is an open door if you'd like to give a short 1 or 2 minute explanation about why you are asking this question. It might be able to have them give you more specific information that will help you feel at ease. And they should be passing this information on to the behavior analyst who's going to take over the case if it's not that person whom you're speaking to directly. Okay, so that's a really important question that's going to individualize your treatment and ensure as best as possible that you are receiving quality care services that align with your values and what you are looking for in contracting with ABA. Okay, so we just went over how to interview a company. Now we're going to move on to how to interview the behavior analyst. Okay, a behavior analyst, sometimes a board-certified assistant behavior analyst, is basically the case manager. They're the ones who you will speak with directly first. They will be asking tons of questions. They might have you fill out some paperwork, some questionnaires. They will keep in touch with you most often, but they are the ones writing the behavior plan, writing the goals, setting everything up, okay? While you interview them, I want you to ask the following questions. And if you come up with more, please post them or send them to me. It's so helpful to have a community as a group to be able to support each other in getting what we're looking for with ABA, okay? So ask these questions to the behavior analyst. First, I want you to ask their experience, but you could be open-ended or you can make it specific to your child and situation. I would highly recommend, if you do that you discuss the behaviors themselves. Okay, you may discuss the diagnoses, but really behavior analysts are focusing on the behavior, okay? Diagnoses are absolutely important. For example, I have a long history of working with individuals who have diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder, but I also specialize in Down syndrome, oppositional defiance disorder, ADHD, and even individuals who do not have a diagnosis. So in hearing that, you might have an understanding of what I have done, but the behaviors of a person with autism look different depending on the person, right? The behaviors of a person with oppositional defiance disorder might look different. One of those people might yell and scream at the time any kind of demand is placed, but another individual might just sit stone cold, stare off into space, will not move their body, will not make eye contact. Completely different behaviors, same diagnosis, okay? So when you're asking these questions about the experience that a behavior analyst has, I would like for you to think about your specific situation. Have these things written down too, about what behaviors are concerning to you and their experience with them, okay? By the way, while you're interviewing the behavior analyst, I would suggest allotting maybe 20 to 30 minutes or so for this conversation. Most of the time, these are unpaid calls and consultations from the behavior analyst. Some of them, including myself, have given an hour of my time, which I do value in terms of building rapport with the family. But just to be concise and limit, runoff sentences and giving all the details, what you're really looking for is a change. And so I want you to just kind of be specific about what you're looking for and giving the information about that. If you give your history, yeah, it's important for them to understand. They will surely, I hope, sympathize, possibly empathize with you on that, have an understanding of why you're asking what you are. But ultimately, you want change. So I want you to think more so in terms of moving forward, what you are looking for. Okay, so you've asked the question to the behavior analyst about their experiences. If you want to ask how long they're in the field, you may, but a lot of the time, individuals in the field of behavior analysis almost always are in it for their heart. They have a family member, a close friend, somebody who has a disability, and they have either seen ABA work for that person or they know that ABA can work for that person and therefore they're in the field. So that's always a nice little touch. What I want you to do as well when you're interviewing this behavior analyst is ask how often they plan to see your child. So the behavior analyst is a really key part of how ABA is going to go for your child. The behavior analyst their role is not to directly implement the therapy. They will do a little bit, okay? They should. But you need a team of people. They will help to hire that team, okay? But their role as the case manager is to supervise and analyze the data and to make sure everything is running smoothly as it should, okay? So I want you to ask them details, bullet points, about how they plan to run the case. Now, if you say it like that, I would just support it with backup questions, okay? So, for example, we talked about how often do they plan on seeing your child, okay? It should not be once a month. It could be at least 2 times a month, which seems a little scarce, but at least in the beginning, hopefully, based on your availability, of course, I would say at least once a week, 4 times a month, okay? I would not expect anything more than twice a week. Some behavior analysts do have that availability, and it could be twice a week, so 8 times per month. But on average, it's between 3 and 4 times per month that a behavior analyst is seeing your child. Okay, now, what about communication? This is a really, 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 really big part of why ABA services may go well and may not. I'm a huge communicator. I think it's so super duper important to just understand where everyone's coming from. Sometimes it might look like micromanaging, but it really depends on the behavior analyst ensuring that they are not just constantly delivering information and instead are gathering information. So, as far as communication, what I do on my cases is I set up group chats through text messages. The group chats have the behavior analysts, the caregivers, and then the RBTs who are staffed on the case. The group chat should be used as far as communication for sharing a lot about scheduling. So if someone has to call out sick, if someone is running late, if we need to change the date or time of a session, okay? Everyone needs to be notified. So there's communication there, okay? Communicating when there's a problem. Okay, so this is on the family as well. This is on you, right? The behavior analysts, if they're only coming 3 to 4 times a month, they're not there to see everything. But you are there, and you're going to be seeing how your child's responding, the other therapists and what they're doing. If you have questions, you've got to bring them to your behavior analyst's attention, okay? Remember, your behavior analyst, this is their career. They have other clients whom they work with. They do care for you and your child, but you've got to give them a good 24 to 48 hours to respond, okay? So I want you, when you have a question, to please reach out to your behavior analyst. If it is specifically about your child's behaviors, go ahead and text the group chat unless you prefer a phone call to give some more details. But if it is about the therapist who is working with your child, I recommend you side text or call your behavior analyst, email, ask them, say, you have concerns about the RBT and you would just like to chat about it and problem solve, okay? So communication goes 2 ways, but definitely they need to respond to you in a timely manner. With sharing like pictures and videos, a lot of the time parents and therapists enjoy sending updates as far as communicating with the family specifically about how the child is doing, okay? Consider if you are having ABA therapy that is being delivered in a school setting or a daycare or a camp, then the RBT, the therapists, need to follow a lot of the rules of the camp related to taking pictures, sharing information. So they have permission then, let's just say we're going with the pictures, they have permission to take pictures of just your child. Let's say that you want to know if your child is playing with other children, how it's going. They are technically not supposed to be taking pictures or videos that include other individuals in the pictures, even if it's a friend and the parents, even if they give permission, just due to liability and the way the world is nowadays. We want to just make sure that we are sharing pictures and videos that only contain your child, and as far as sharing those, should only be in a group chat. Therapists should not be posting on social media. You have every right, if you would like, to post a picture that you receive from the therapy team on social media. But as far as communication and with videos and pictures, it should be only of your child during ABA therapy delivery. All right. So you interviewed the behavior analysts about their experiences. You interviewed them about communication. And then about how often they're going to see your child. So I think that's a really good start, because more questions will pop up as you receive ABA services from them, as far as their style and as far as how they work on different behaviors. Okay? Now, when you're interviewing the RBT, I want you to keep a couple things in mind. First, I would ask your behavior analyst, what is the timeline for getting an RBT on the case? How many RBTs will I have with my child? That's an important question too. And your BCBA may or may not be able to answer that question. It is recommended, depending on how many hours your child gets approved for, that you have 2 and at most 3 RBTs working with your child on a rotating basis in a week. So for example, if your child is receiving therapy at home Monday through Friday, you might have 2 RBTs that do Monday, Tuesday, you might have 1 RBT that's Monday, Tuesday from 3 to 5. You have RBT number 2 that might be Wednesday, Thursday from 3 to 5. And then you might have RBT number 3 who does Friday from 3 to 5. Okay? Now, I know this feels kind of strange having a bunch of different people in your home working with your child, but for individuals with developmental disabilities, it's very important to ensure that generalization is embedded into services. So what that means is that there might be a person who kind of vibes or gets glued to a certain person. They might enjoy their company. They might like their style, respond well to them. All in well with that. We want you guys to feel comfortable and to build relationships and rapport. However, we do not want your child to just think that with this one person, this is a rule and this is how I act with them, right? Because that probably, that's that trap that people fall into about like, oh, with dad they do this, but with mom they would never, blah, 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 right? That's exactly the point of having multiple RBTs, is to avoid that. The therapist should be implementing the same goals. They might do it a little bit differently. They might do it the same. The point is that the child is receiving the same goals delivered similarly, and they're expected to respond the same regardless of who is teaching them. So when ABA therapy is starting and the team is being built, ask your behavior analyst, how many RBTs will be working with my child? Then it's going to come time to have RBTs added to the case. This does not happen often. You don't have to do this, but if you would like to interview the RBTs, you may before they start. I have had families ask to do that before, and I completely understand and support it. And as the behavior analyst, I usually am in attendance as well with the RBT. When you're interviewing an RBT, I would just do a quick 10 to 15 minute interview. The point is not to intimidate. The point is to just gather information on their personality, their style, if you think they might work well with you and your child, okay? So I would focus on the RBT, trying to do most of the talking. I would just ask them to tell them about themselves and their experiences. A lot of the time, you will find RBTs that are brand new in the field. They might not have working experiences, but understanding the why they decided to go into the field and acquire a RBT credential is going to be important for you to understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. Once again, they probably have a family member or a friend who has a disability, received ABA therapy. They get an understanding of what it's about, okay? So they are invested with their heart. Now, you might find what I feel is a good one, who is somebody who is actually in school to be a behavior analyst. Now, they might be in school for something different, like special education, occupational therapy, speech therapy. Wonderful. The point is that they are in school for a similar degree, and they are invested. They want to learn. They understand the value of therapy. That's what you want to hear. Okay? Don't straight up ask the RBT, do you value therapy, right? I want you to ask them their experience and see how they elaborate. Okay? And then from there, if you could think of any follow-up questions, once again, I wouldn't exceed just a 10 to 15 minute interview. But as far as a follow-up question, I can't think of anything specific right now. I just think that it's going to kind of come up naturally. Maybe like, have they worked with this behavior analyst before? I think that's kind of a big one. So along the years, I have RBTs that are placed with me. There have been quite a few that I've met who have been in different professions, and then I've kind of transferred them over and they've become my RBT. And therefore I've put them on many of my cases and we work well together. So that could be a good question, is asking the behavior analyst and the RBT, have you guys worked together on cases before? If you hear no, it's not necessarily a red flag. It's just they're going to have to learn each other's styles, and the behavior analyst is probably going to spend a little bit more time training that person and getting to know them and making sure that they're following company procedures, they're following the behavior plan, they're accurately collecting data, they're communicating appropriately, professionally, timely manner. If they have worked together before, you may not ask details about cases and how things have gone, but you can ask maybe the length or how many cases they have shared. okay? It's okay if they just say one. I have RBTs who we've been on the same cases for 3 years, and I totally trust and value those RBTs to make their own decisions. Of course, consulting with me, depending on the situation, asking the family, but I trust that they know what they're doing. So I think that's a really good question, is to ask the behavior analyst and the RBT, have you guys worked together before? And then, of course, end the interview with, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you and having you meet my child. Okay? All right. I'm trying to find my paper where I wrote down my additional questions, but it has slipped me. Sorry, guys. Here it is. Okay. Okay. This is the okay. That was question number 1, interviewing. Okay. Question number 2. Step number 2, I should say, is ask details of the who, what, when, where, why, and how of delivery of ABA services. Now, once again, these conversations could happen at the initial conversation that you have with the behavior analyst, but it might be better to save it for the first in-person meeting, okay? I would try to have these conversations, the WH questions, limited to maybe a 15 to 20 minute conversation. There are so many ways you can dive deep into these, but you just want, right now, surface level. You want to see if the behavioral analyst can confidently answer these, okay? If they don't have a plan in mind for your child, then it's going to be a wishy-washy type of service. A behavior analyst may be new, and you might be their first case. That doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong, but regardless, they are your case manager with delivery of ABA services, so they need to have a clear grasp on how they are going to make sure that ABA is doing what it's supposed to for you and your child, okay? So here we go with the WH questions for your behavior analyst. You've already asked the who, okay? Who is going to be delivering services? Who is responsible for what, okay? Next question, where? Where are services going to be delivered? Now, this is where you dictate, right, the location of the services. Services, depending on funding, depending on rules of a various location, services might be delivered at school. They might be delivered at home, via telehealth in the community. So let's say services are delivered at school and you're asking a where question. Once again, it really depends on the school. Some schools allow the therapist to be wherever the child is. So if the child is in the classroom, the therapist will be in the classroom with them. But you could also dive deeper. Where are you sitting exactly? Are you having to sit right next to my child? Are they unable to sit by themselves? Or are you able to give them some independence and kind of sit back with them, right? So where? Also, though, some schools are like, hey, nope, sorry, you can only deliver ABA therapy when there are no other people around due to confidentiality. So you're going to be in a separate room and it's just going to be the therapist and your child. It's not an ideal situation for many purposes, but I would just ask that, think about it, see how you could work around if that is something that you and the behavior analyst agree upon. Okay. When is therapy going to be delivered? Once again, that is based on availabilities, right? Your availability, your child's availability, the therapist's availability. But when are the behavior therapists going to deliver therapy is something you'll want to make sure you write down. It should be a consistent schedule. I don't think there has been a time that I've ever heard, we'll play it by ear or we'll figure it out. It's always scheduled. So it might start with one RBT added to the case because we might want to build up. Let's say that your child is approved for 20 hours a week, but they've never had a therapist in their life before, and this is going to be a big change for them and your family. Then the therapist might start slow. They might say, okay, we're going to add one RBT this month, and then next month we'll add another RBT, and then the hours will increase. So the first RBT will just do Mondays, Tuesdays. When RBT 2 comes along, they'll do Wednesday, Thursdays, just as an example. Okay, why? These questions, by the way, you can ask at any time during the therapeutic relationship and services that you have, okay? Why? I really love this question. It should not be interrogative in nature. It should be something that you are intrigued, that you are wanting to understand why a therapist is doing something a certain way, or why are they working on this goal? What is the purpose of this goal, right? Why do we even have this? Why do you have to write things down? Okay, please be mindful of how you're asking these questions, but this why question is so important for you to understand why ABA therapy looks the way it does. Because if you can think back to your experience in the past with ABA, you were probably wondering why they were doing what they're doing. The therapists, right? Why they were working on XYZ, why they were doing it this way, why when your child seemed in distress, did they just ignore it, right? There's usually always a reason and a rationale. Conversation is always the way to go about it. When you are asking this why question, depending on what's happening, you may ask in the moment, or you may ask shortly after the situation has ended. I highly recommend you do it either same day or within 1 to 2 days, business days, of course. Please respect, just a side note, please respect the boundaries that your therapist put in place. They should not be texting at night or on the weekends. Some therapists, of course, do work on the weekends, but the point is, whatever boundaries are in place, they have their own personal lives as well. Try to focus on the business hours to be able to communicate with your ABA team. But definitely asking these why questions about, why are you doing it this way? And, of course, if you are not comfortable, express that, okay? Express that also to your behavior analysts. They have more of the rationale as to why a certain intervention is in place. The RBTs might not know that. And if they don't, the RBTs should absolutely be going to the behavior analyst with the follow-up and letting them know that you're asking these questions. But definitely don't be fearful to ask the WHs, okay? We went over the who, what, where, when, and why that you will ask the behavior analyst, but also RBT at the beginning and during ABA. And we'll just throw a how in there. It doesn't start with a W, but how? How do you do that? This is such an important question. Please value it. The whole point of therapy is for someone to not need therapy anymore. And this goes for all types of therapy. Now, there are cases where people just value it and want to have it forever. I love that. No biggie. I'm a person like that. I love therapy, but I have it, depending on where I am at in my life, I might do my check-ins 4 times a year or once a month, maybe not once a week, right? But I'm fading out of my therapy because I'm learning how to implement the tools that I'm being taught. So this how question is so important because I want you to be able to observe the therapy and learn what the interventions are. And that's the whole goal. You need to be involved, okay? There are definitely companies out there that there's limited involvement, but this is also on you and your availability. You've got to make time for it. Whether it be virtually or over the phone, in person is definitely the best. But if you can plan at least once a month, if not once a week, to be present and active in a session, that's going to be the best way for you to get a clear understanding of what ABA looks like for your child. If services are delivered at a location that you are not able to be, such as the school or a summer camp, I highly recommend that at least once a month you get a caregiver training. That means you, the parent, whoever is the guardian of that child, to have a session, whether it be with the RBT or the behavior analyst. Okay, you've got to know what's going on. You cannot rely on just the group chat or the notes to be able to get a clear understanding of what ABA therapy looks like for your child. Okay, so we went over the WHs, we threw a how in there. Last thing that I want you to do to feel comfortable with starting ABA therapy is I want you to attend and ask for check-ins. Okay, so a good behavior analyst would already approach you with this, would already schedule these with you. Depending on how I deliver ABA therapy services, like let's say if it's in the home and the parent's always there, I don't schedule it because the parent's always there and I'm checking in with them every time I come to the house. But if services are delivered in a location where the parent is not, such as in the community, school, clinic, summer camp, I am at the beginning of the month reaching out to the family and saying, I have this date, this date, this date available, which works for you, so we can meet and review everything. But if your behavior analyst is not doing that, be proactive, reach out and say, hi, are you available this date, this date, this date to meet so we can go over everything? You can keep it a casual thing like that, or you could be specific with what you're looking for. Hey, my child's having a lot of tantrums. I know you guys are working on this too. Can we meet either this date, this date, this date so we can go over everything? I'd really like an in-person update, okay? Be involved. The therapy is only going to be as good as you make it out to be, okay? The more that you're involved in communicating, the more comfortable you're going to feel. You also need to let go and let them do their job as well. I don't want you being on top of them during therapy, but I want you to understand how the therapeutic services are delivered. So when you're asking for check-ins, depending on who I'm working with, as far as the caregivers go and what they are looking for, I will geek out and I will bring the data, I will bring the graphs. Data is what drives the field of ABA. That's how we make our decisions. So the data is super duper important, but it's objective. It's dry sometimes. So if you're a numbers person, I recommend say, hey, how are they doing? And you don't want to just hear good, pretty good. You want to hear, well, when we started with you guys, your child was having tantrums basically all day long and they lasted an hour or two, but now the tantrums are more like 30 minutes. So that's a really good improvement. That's what you want to hear with check-ins. Okay. What you could also be asking for is what works and what doesn't. So if they are working on tolerating hearing no, that's a big one, right? If your child screams, pouts, throws things when you say no, and you know that therapists are also working on that, I want you guys to meet and just focus on that goal. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Okay, so what are the details of that program? How are you setting up the child for success? These are the things I want you to ask the therapist. So, what are the preventative strategies, right? How are you setting them up for success? What are you doing? What are you showing them? What are you telling them? So that when you tell them no, they're less likely to have a big problem behavior. But when you tell them no, are they accepting it or are they having these problem behaviors? Okay, they're having the problem behaviors. What are you guys doing? Right? That's what I want these check-ins to be about. You need to know the ins and outs of how the therapy is being delivered, because there is going to be a time that these therapists are not there. And you need to learn what they're doing, if it's working, if it's not working, okay? This is a big one too. Let's say that you already know what's going on. You're doing the interventions, but it's not working for you. You've got to say that to the behavior analyst. You cannot, please, don't be talking behind their back and saying, this ABA therapy sucks. Like, they don't know what they're doing. I'm doing what they're telling me, but it's not working. I'm not going to do it anymore. It's really common. It's really common to feel that way, but I encourage you, talk with the behavior analyst, the RBT, if you have a good relationship. The more that you do it and practice, and there might be a little twist of something different, you need to do it a different way, and it's going to work. But also, ABA therapy is about putting a person in a situation repeatedly so that they can experience it and learn how to respond and how not to respond. So when you are implementing an intervention, it might not work for a little bit of time, a week or two, a month. But if everybody's doing it the same way or similarly, your child's going to come around. That's the generalization piece, okay? So you really want to make sure that you are touching base with your behavior analyst about the details of ABA therapy and asking for clarification about how ABA services are being delivered and how your child is responding to the services. Okay? So I know this was a lot, but thank you so much for listening. I hope this was super helpful. Just to recap, there are 3 things that I want you to do when you're considering going back into trying ABA therapy. Here they are. I want you to first interview the company and the behavior analyst and RBT. 2, I want you to ask the WH questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how of ABA therapy. 3, once you contract with ABA therapy, I want you to attend and even request check-ins. It might be on a monthly basis, might be bi-monthly, but don't go more than 2 months without doing a formal in-person check-in, okay? I hope this was super helpful. Keep it real.